Thank you, ladies. I have to admit, the bar was set pretty high this morning with Father's homily, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to add that much more, because he really cut to the essence of what we're going to be discussing today. But because I am a nerdy scientist, I think I will be able to add a little bit more about that. So I think we're ready to go. All right, so researchers, being the scientists that they are, have to define everything. So the first thing I want to go over with you is how, as psychologists, do we look at friendship? How do we define that? And basically what long-term research has shown and really honed in on is that friendship is a long-term positive relationship that requires cooperation. That makes sense, right? You know, why is it that we are at the top of the food chain? And a lot of researchers would argue that our ability to be cooperative and to be good friends is what allows us to build civilization and have a good functioning society. So that's where we can start. And we know that humans, and even our primate, sort of not peers, but in the mammal kingdom, we all create small-scale, intensely bonded groups that act as a protection to life stresses. So very early on, mammals realized we're really not good if we try to do things on our own. We're much better if we get into small groups where we can really get to know each other and trust each other, and we know that we have each other's back. A very, very famous British anthropologist, Dunbar, in the 50s and 60s, theorized, after studying primates but also humans, that there was a limit to how many friendships an individual can even have, because that requires effort, right? We all lead very busy lives, so how is it that we can be a good friend to 1,000+ people on our Facebook page? It's not really possible. And so what several studies, in fact, like up to 140+ studies have shown that in general, we all have about 150 friends that we can name, that we can think about readily in our heads, who are in our lives. About 50 of them we would consider good friends. Those are the people that we would be inviting to our weddings, etc. After that, we can say that we have 15 close friends, you know, the people that we would want at our baptisms and other occasions as well. But really, when we talk about intimate friends, it comes down to about 5. But 5 really is the magic number when we look at friendship from a research perspective. Because many studies have shown that if an individual does not feel that he or she has about 5 really close friends that they can depend on, they report much lower levels of satisfaction and happiness. So think about that for yourselves. Can each of you in this room think about, okay, if something were to seriously happen tomorrow, do I have 5 friends that I can contact right away and I know that they're going to be there for me immediately? So it's just something to think about. And are you that person for somebody else? And the simple fact is, civilization requires friendship and cooperation. That's why there's so much research looking into it. It's an absolutely essential part to our daily lives, but also to the bigger picture of society. So that's why this is such a great topic to discuss today. And finally, obviously, we're linking this to God, to Christ, to being a Christian, a good Catholic. And really, I think we kind of all know that friendship is also necessary for the gospel to come alive, right? We're building, hopefully, some heaven on earth, and we can do that through friendship. That is really how we can share Christ's love with others. So friendship is key. So I do also want to talk about what the opposite of friendship is, and it is important to highlight because a lot of the research, obviously, looking at the benefits of friendship, we realize what are the downsides to not having good friends, and that's loneliness. And sadly, I can tell you from my private practice, it's a real problem in today's world. There are a lot of lonely people out there, and a lot of them end up at my door. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about how I work with that in my practice. But it's important to be aware that not everybody has the friends that they need. And in fact, in the United Kingdom, they've recently set up a task force that only looks at loneliness, if you can imagine, because it's become really a public policy crisis. And that is because epidemiological studies show that older adults who report feeling lonely have an increased risk of dying early. It increases by 26 to 50% across several studies. They've seen that. And what they theorize is that these people who are lacking good friends in their life, they perceive the world as threatening, they perceive the world as lonely, they feel like, there's really not much to look forward to. And that will affect your blood pressure, it affects your heart rate, and sadly, of course, that's going to cause hypertension and other health problems. And what is really interesting as well is that when they put in other factors like higher body weight, obesity, or pollution, loneliness, that reporting of loneliness actually has a greater impact in this research. It's fascinating, right? So really, at the end of the day, we really have to worry about friendship a lot more than some of these other risk factors. And so in my practice, the way that I talk, I always assess for loneliness. It's one of the major things that I ask in that very, very first session with my clients. And the minute I sense that they only have one or two friends, and even then they don't see them very often, one of the first treatment goals is to get them reconnected to a good social network of at least 5 people. So I always use that as sort of my magic number in my practice, is getting them connected to 5 people. And in fact, there's an evidence-based psychotherapy that's strictly based on social network. It's called Interpersonal Therapy. And it focused a lot on people struggling with depression and also postpartum depression. And so the main focus is trying to get these people reconnected to their primary resource, which is their friends. And also, I don't want the clients to get too attached to me, right? Like, they're there because they don't feel like they have a lot of friends. So one of the way I always kind of remind them from session 1 is, I can't wait for you guys to not want to come see me. Like, I want you to think, oh, I have an appointment with Dr. Lalande. I really would rather be doing X, Y, or Z. That's when I know they're doing much better. So the antidote to loneliness, of course, is friendship. And the reason that we as humans like to break into these small, closely bonded groups is that, in fact, it does protect our brains and our bodies from stress, anxiety, and depression. In short, friendship is a really, really good happy pill. Like, it's super important for our health. And research also shows that it holds a particular benefit for us as we age. So having supportive friends in old age was more predictive of better health than even strong family ties. That research blows me away. That's really interesting, because what it tells us is, yes, it's super important to stay close to your family members, be there for your spouse, be there for your children, etc. But it's really also important for us to remember in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s that we need relationships outside our family. They are equally, if not more, important to us in our long-term health. And also, again, linking this to what's really the most important message today, we need to talk about the disciples, right? When Christ began his mission on earth in his 30s, right away he had to get some friends to help him, right? He wasn't going to be able to do that on his own. And he wasn't going to be able to reach as many people. And so he needed friends. And so he needs us to be good friends as well. And so we need to be friends with Christ. We need to be friends with others. And that's going to go a long way to really healing a lot of the pain that we see in our society. Another area of friendship that I don't want to overlook is it's easy for us to talk about our super close friends. But what about our friends that are not very close? So researchers like to put labels on everything, so they call these weak ties. So friendships that are more on the periphery, they're still important, but they're not quite as important as our strong ties. But they are very, very important. So these casual relationships are what make up community, right? If you think about our small neighborhood, if you know your local, the people at the local bakery, if you know the people at your local Loblaws or wherever you do your grocery shopping, if you can foster more sort of friendships where you know people by their first name, you ask them how they're doing, it really enhances your quality of life, and it enhances their quality of life. And for any of you who have university-age students, there was a really interesting study done that showed that university students who leave home, right, they go to another city to study, those weak ties were very, very predictive of happiness and well-being in their new home and in their new campus. So if you're 19 or 20 and you've moved away from home, if you can really get to know as many people in that new city as possible, you're going to feel much happier. So it's important that even at an early age, you're encouraging your children to connect with others in society, to see that all of those peripheral friendships are very important to their well-being. And also they provide a tremendous amount of information, right? It was, after moving to Ottawa, I moved from New York, I didn't know anything about anything. So I just started asking kind of people in the neighborhood, people I'd meet at the park, can you recommend a good dentist? We're looking for a good pediatrician, things like that. And all of those little friendships that I made that were pretty superficial, right? These are people I didn't know very well, that ended up benefiting me in innumerable ways. So it's really important that we sort of be chatty and we be connected to those around us. So another study that I really wanted to share with you, it really struck me because there was a huge personal story to this too. Dr. Sunya Luthar, she's an amazing researcher. She really is one of the best researchers of this century, and I was fortunate enough to have studied with her in New York before she moved to Arizona State University. She took a particular interest in studying women as they transition to motherhood. And being a working mother herself, she decided to focus on first-time mothers who were also working outside the home. So in all kinds of fields, like medical field, engineering field, science fields, like sometimes very high-stress jobs. And she wanted to see what was that like? How was the transition to motherhood, and what maybe was predictive of not enjoying motherhood so much, and what predicted enjoying motherhood. And the number one predictor of well-being for these women who worked outside the home and who were also raising a child for the first time was a close and supportive group of friends, female friends. And this was true above and beyond reporting a happy marriage. That really was very interesting to me because I had that happen to myself. My first two children were born in New York City, and New York City has this great law that you can't go too many blocks without having a public park space for children. So in New York City, if you walk a certain number of blocks, you're going to see a playground. It's by law required, which is great because that ends up being the place where you meet all the moms and dads and nannies, and you end up building a little sort of network for yourself. And I had an amazing network of mom friends when I became a mom and I was in graduate school. And that was amazing to me. I really enjoyed motherhood. And then I moved to Ottawa, and I love Canada now, so don't get me wrong, but it was a really, really rough transition because I knew nobody, I had no friends, I was in my early 30s with two little boys, 2 and 6 months, and it was rough. I went through what I would call kind of like a little mini depression, really. Fortunately, I was able to function and it was all okay. But it was really, really hard for me. And it wasn't until I was doing the research for this slideshow that it hit me, wow. Because honestly, not to brag or anything, but my husband's amazing. Like, he really is. And I thought, my husband's amazing. He could not be more loving. He could not be more supportive. Why am I so sad? Like, why is this so hard for me? And now I get it. Like, it makes sense to me because those girlfriends that we have, when we become moms, you need to know that you're not alone, that you're not crazy, that that it's hard, and that's really important. So I wanted to share that because if you are there, if you're supporting other young moms, keep doing it because it's essential. And I love what Dr. Luthar said about it because basically she explained that well-connected and happy mothers mean happier and healthier children, right? It's so important, that friendship, because you're not only helping the mom herself, you're helping that next generation of children who need a happy and healthy mom. And so what Dr. Luther says is we need to help mom be well by helping her feel loved, right? And so that's, I think, a really beautiful and important example of how friendship is key to our well-being and to the well-being of our society. Another really, really beautiful example of how I think friendship can benefit society in really a very important global way is through long-term or longitudinal research that people have been doing on intergroup contact theory. And basically what that means is the theory is when maybe two sides are very oppositional and in conflict with one another, if we can just get to the more human connection where we have more in common than not, it's going to help resolve high conflict areas in the world. And so the Seeds of Peace Exchange program is one. There are multiple programs. In fact, there was a really great documentary that I saw last year about a program that started, I think, in the early 80s that took kids from Northern Ireland, Protestants and Catholics, and had them stay for summer camps in the States with various families who would house them and who would house a Protestant teen and a Catholic teen. And that program was really, really powerful. They didn't do any research. There was no research, but we, basically when we look at how the peace program, the peace process worked in Northern Ireland, there really was a significant transition in attitudes, probably about a decade after this program started, because those teenagers grew up to become young, politically involved adults who had more direct connection with the opposite side. And so this program puts together teenagers from conflict regions, so the Middle East, places like that, where they're on opposing sides. And what they have found in the long-term research, they get them together for seminars and group work, and they really do have to exchange and interact with each other. And this is actually a research program. So they do lots of surveys, they do lots of questionnaires, and they found that the teenagers who go back home, it's not a radical shift. It's not absolutely that these places are going to be peaceful, but the teenagers who reported forming at least one close relationship with someone from the other group, they did develop more positive attitudes toward the other group in general. And that's huge. If you can send a young teenager back home with a radically different sense of who these other people are when they used to be seen as enemies, that's huge. And that was done through friendship. So that's another really powerful example of how friendship and sharing and vulnerability and just opening yourself up to another person has tremendous potential to helping a lot of the troubles that we see in today's society. So basically, we will more easily resolve conflict when both sides try to get to know more about each other. Building strong ties really can help. So of course, I want to mention Pope Francis, and this was a great article that was sent to me by Sarah. I think I've been talking about friendship in theory and sort of being nerdy and researcher-like about it, but I think it's time for us to get into the nitty-gritty of what that looks like as a Catholic woman. And so I think Pope Francis sums it up quite beautifully. A true friend knows your secrets. She is someone in whom you can confide. So that really speaks to this ability to open up, to be vulnerable, to share sort of the deepest and maybe some of the places that are really hurting inside of us. That is a true friend. Like someone that you feel, this is a safe person. I can trust in her. She's not going to judge me. She's there just to listen and to support me. A true friend will not abandon you, especially in your time of need. She's not going to say, oh, that's too difficult. Sorry, I'm out of here. I can't handle that. She always defends you. She's loyal. So, if for whatever reason there might be a little bit of gossiping in the broader circle of friends, a true friend is going to be able to say, she's not here. Maybe that might not be the nicest thing to say about her, right? She'll stand up for you. A true friend doesn't offer you smoke and mirrors. She offers genuine friendship. That genuine friendship means, let me be honest with you. I want you to be honest with me. And if we do it in a loving and respectful way, we can really get to know each other, and then our friendship will deepen and our love for each other will deepen. And of course, she will always give you strong support. She'll give the best of herself. And that is what is really hard. And I'm so thankful to FFI, because doing these slides has really kind of brought me down several notches and has humbled me, because, and I want to keep today's talk positive, of course, but it's really made me think, geez, am I really doing everything I could be doing? Am I really being a good friend like I could be to a lot of my friends who are in need? Because it is, when we're busy and we have however many children we have, or whatever our work lives entail, it's not always easy to keep friendship at the top of our list of priorities, right? And so that you have to think, where I am in my life right now, am I giving the best of myself? It could be, that could be the case, and that's amazing. But maybe we could do a little bit more than we think we could. And so some more concrete tips to that. I thought about that. I sort of checked in with some other resources and some other friends who have studied friendship. And these are unofficial Kathleen Lalande kind of 4 tips. So take this with a grain of salt, but I think it's pretty solidly based stuff. And number 1 would be to pray for your friends. And that is just to keep them in your mind, to keep them in the front of your mind, to be aware that they're in your world. Just even that alone is so important, because it kind of puts everything else into perspective. Does that make sense? What we kind of tend to do, of course it's normal as individuals, is we think, what do I need to get done? What's most pressing today? So the beauty of friendship is that it helps you think more outwardly. Because when we think very inwardly, then we can get a little bit down on ourselves and on our lives, and we get a bit frustrated. So it's really nice to sometimes be focused on other things, and that might help us sort of overcome whatever personal struggles we might be having, and also help us remember that we're not alone. We do have these friends who love us as well. And number 2, I wrote, be there. Show up when there's a need. And I've had 5 children myself, and when I think of my closest friends, I think of the people who brought me food. I'm going to be really honest. So that was huge for me. And so that when I think about sort of who are my friends, phone calls and food and coffee, that's huge. Those real connections are so important. And so anything face-to-face that you can do for your friend, it's huge. You can't you can't overestimate how much that means to your friends. Number 3, I would say, and this is sort of thanks to you guys, thanks to the slides I had to do for this, reach out to say hello on a regular basis and put it in the calendar. So I now, sort of on a weekly basis, I kind of decide, okay, what night of the week can I make a few phone calls? And then I kind of go through my list of contacts and think, oh, I haven't talked to Thea in a while. I'm going to call her this week. And I'm sort of making it part of my weekly to-do list, and that's kind of my Lenten thing. And I'm hoping, because I won't give up coffee or sugar, so that sort of was my Lent thing to do. I'm going to sort of make an effort to call people instead of watching Netflix or whatever that may be. And so that's a little tip that I think can be helpful for us, like actually sort of make it part of your agenda. And then number 4 is super, super important. Listen first and save advice for later. So that's empathy. And I'm going to be talking a lot more about empathy in my second talk, but it's really important to mention it for this first talk, because if you don't listen, you're not going to be able to form the friendship, right? The idea is for you to know that you have a friend and that you are a friend to somebody else, it's this sense of, I'm always getting to know this person, and she's getting to know me. And really the only way to do that is to listen and to allow yourself to really learn about this person. And so you have to be quiet. So if your friend is sharing something difficult and you're tempted to sort of interject and give your perspective or give some advice, be quiet. Just be quiet for a little bit longer, and you're gonna be an even better friend by being more quiet more often than not and just listening. And again, I'm going to go into much more detail in the second talk, but I did want to mention that as being, I think, a huge, important tip. So friendship. So how can we continue to form friendships as an adult? And do we have to? Because it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. We're busy. We're lucky to have a bunch of grandchildren. And do I really have time? Because this is a lot to ask of me. But we know that research shows that adults who continue to form brand new ties as they grow older live longer. I don't know, maybe you don't want to live longer, maybe it's a lot to do, but it's a fact. Like, our ability to continue making new friendships is predictive of a longer and healthier life. So the fact is that a lot of friendships are long-term, hopefully, but others, even if they might be very important at a certain part of your life, they are going to be transitory. Just like, as much as I loved a lot of these women in New York City, there aren't very many with whom I've really been able to keep contact. I was talking to Katie about that because I was pregnant for virtually all of my 30s. And, travel down to New York City to see my friends was just not going to happen, especially when you have to purchase 2 hotel rooms. So, and nobody in their 1-bedroom New York apartment was going to house me and my 5 children. So that's been really hard. And so I had to face the fact that I'm going to have to continue building new friendships in Ottawa. And that's going to require a lot of effort on my part. But it's important because we're going to experience the loss of friendship through people who pass away, through the natural aging process. And it's, part of the reason that we're worried about older adults who see life as lonely. It's because, a lot of their friends have passed away. And then there are no sort of societal rituals of connection to allow them to make new friends. So maybe these are people who are not necessarily going to church, who are not necessarily involved in community clubs where they can continue to meet new people. So those are the kinds of things that we need to be thinking about and fostering as we get older. So, gatherings like this, organizations like FFI, this is what we need.